So, you found yourself a rear-wheel drive manual front-engine shitbox and you're ready to get it sideways at the drift events, or the industrial warehouse nobody is supposed to know about. What do you do next? And how do you build the proper drift car to nail those sweet, delectable skids you've been dreaming about? Well, today we're gonna break down exactly what you need to get sideways and how to empty your bank account doing it. Because this is How to Build a Drift Car. I'm your host, Ricky Skids, and this is Skidded Media. So, assuming your shitbox has no mods on it and is a car that has not been ruined and passed through 12 owners and an Edgar before, what's the first thing to do to help start getting you skidding? In my book, and everybody knows this, it's coilovers. Aftermarket coilovers, whether it be a more affordable coilover like Megan or BC, or more high-end like Olin's, Fortunato, or KW, this is the foundation of everything. Why, you might ask? It makes everything way more controllable, from being able to choose your spring rate and have a stiffer ride with less body roll, while having adjustable dampening for small bump sensitivity. Coilovers are the most crucial mod to buy over anything on a drift build. With also being able to adjust your ride height, you can get that sick tight fitment and style a drift car deserves. Coilovers will range anywhere from 800 to upwards to 5,000 buckaroos depending on your car and your setup. So what's next? Well, before we get too far ahead, let's talk about differentials. See, if you have an open diff, good luck getting your car sideways, and if you do, good luck keeping the drift going, especially through a series of turns or on a track. That's because when you're drifting, you need power going to both wheels to get a consistent drift, and open diffs don't do that, especially on dry asphalt. Now, if you don't have one already, you're gonna need an LSD, otherwise known as a limited slip differential, or you'll need a welded diff, which is my favorite. Some cars come with a factory LSD, but a lot of times they are torque sensing LSDs, also known as torsion LSDs, which means they only lock up when they sense a lot of power or slipping. In my experience, torsons are okay, but they're not super consistent. See, they'll lock up most of the time and be enough to get you sideways. But the problem shows up when you decelerate, when you let off the gas. See, when you let off the gas, the torsion LSD thinks,
he does not need me,
and unlocks. Then when you go back on throttle, it may or may not fully lock up, and boom, you lose the drift. That's where high-end two-way diffs come into play. See, they'll lock up whether you're accelerating or decelerating, making everything consistent. But they can be pretty expensive. So what's the alternative? That's where the welded diff comes in clutch. If you've got an open diff, you're in luck. All you need is for the splines and the differential to be welded together. This is a cheap, affordable way to get 100% lockup in the diff, no matter what you do. And if you're a good welder, or you know someone who is, a welded diff can last a long time and be super reliable. Just no booger welds, or the only thing that you'll be sliding is the pieces of your diff across the pavement when it blows up the first time you clutch kick it. Now, if you have an LSD and want more consistency, hit up a junkyard, buy an open diff, get that sucker welded. I swapped my factory LSD out and found a free open diff on Marketplace and got it welded for 75 bucks. And I've been drifting on it for several years now, beating the absolute shit out of it. Welded diffs can definitely be reliable when they are done right. Now, price-wise for a welded diff, you're looking at $100 to $300 depending on your diff source and your welder source. While for a two-way diff, that'll set you back around $1,000 to $1,500. But we're not done yet, so hold it. Now, If you haven't watched our video Drifting More Than Just Sideways, I recommend watching that to fully understand drifting, because you should know the other half of drifting is style. It's what makes drifting drifting. So hopefully you bought your car with style in mind and with what you want to do to it. But we'll talk about style a little bit later. What other mods do you need? So any car that comes from the factory usually has all sorts of ways to make it smoother and not feel like you're driving a washing machine. One of the ways that manufacturers reduce vibrations is by using rubber bushings, and they're everywhere in your car, from diff bushings, subframe bushings, trans mounts, steering rack bushings to engine mounts. They are everywhere on your car to make your ride smoother. What all these rubber bushings do is make your ride feel more comfortable. Without them, you'd feel every little mechanical vibration while driving. But this is a drift car. No more daily drivers here. And if those bushings haven't already fallen apart because your shitbox is 20 or 30 years old and an Edgar didn't do anything to fix it, they will fall apart soon. Also, fun fact, these rubber bushings absorb some of the power being transferred to the wheels, reducing some of the wheel power and making things a little less predictable.
So, what do you do?
Poly or solid bushings are your answer. These will help solidify everything and make it way more predictable. Now, your car is gonna feel like a washing machine with pennies flying around it, but that's okay because we're getting you sideways. Cost-wise, to replace all the bushings, it's not too bad. You're looking at around $300 to $1,000 depending on what you're whipping. Next up, we need to get your alignment precise, or at least close to precise. Factory alignment adjustments often aren't enough, and when you lower your car, it messes with the alignment too. With drift cars, you need to dial in camber, caster, and toe to have ultimate control and tire wear. This means you'll probably need aftermarket adjustable control arms, front, rear, upper, lower, back, sideways, and almost everywhere, depending on the car's suspension geometry. Some cars like the S chassis or BRZ FRS 86 chassis have what's called a McPherson strut style suspension, where there's no upper control arm, so the camber adjustment lies in the top hat of the coilover, which makes it a little bit easier than dealing with a double wishbone suspension. But you'll still need some adjustable arms even for the McPherson strut style cars. Now, the sweet spot for drift cars is negative camber in the front, ranging from -4 to -7 degrees, and this isn't just for style, this is for function. When you're countersteering, negative camber in the front keeps the tires from riding on the outside edge or folding onto the sidewall of the tire, and instead it gives you a full contact patch, resulting in more steering grip up front when you're nailing those sweet skids. Now, in the rear, you want that camber to be as zeroed out as possible so your tires wear evenly. If not, you'll probably only burn through half the tire and have to flip them if you catch them in time. That's why adjustable control arms are so important. Also, one way to keep burning money, because there's a lot of them and they ain't cheap. As far as toe and caster, that depends on your car and your goals. Sometimes drift cars have extreme toe out in the front, upwards to -3 degrees for Ackerman angle and quicker steering. But this wrecks your tires since they're being pushed out as you drive straight. Dialing back to 0 or -1 degrees is totally fine, and this can usually be achieved with your stock tie rods, so don't sweat it yet. Now, caster is crucial because it helps with self-steer when you're drifting. Lowering your car often messes with the caster, reducing that self-steer. You'll need caster arms if your car doesn't have a lot of adjustability. Typically, caster for drifting is best between +6 and +9 degrees, depending on your car. So how much is this gonna set you back? Well, depending on how you do it and what brands you go with, it can range anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 for all the control arms. Now hold on to your dickies because we're not even close to being done yet. Adding to your burning pile of money and your shitbox is Angle. You want more angle to get more angle? Well, I'll give it to you. There are a few ways to go about it. You can Frankenstein it by cutting your steering knuckles shorter, re-welding them and adding extended tie rods, or you can buy aftermarket knuckles with tie rods, or you can go all out with an angle kit. Now, full angle kits can be pricey and often require wider fenders and smaller wheels in the front to get the full effect. But for grassroots drifting or even pro-am drifting, cut or aftermarket knuckles with extended tie rods are more than enough. Now, the benefit with full angle kits is that they'll come with all the control arms, the tension arms, a steering rack relocation, and some more. But they're usually overkill unless you're competing and going full race car. How much? Well, for a knuckle setup, you're looking at around $300 to $400, but for a full angle kit, it can be anywhere around $2,000. And that's not even counting the wider fenders and wheels that you'll need to run a full angle kit. So with that, go ahead and add a couple more $1,000s on top of the angle kit price if you want to get the most out of a full angle kit. So what else? You've got your coilovers, you got your differential, you got your bushing, you got your adjustable arms, and your angle. What else could you possibly need? Well, let's head inside the car to make sure you're getting optimal performance while you're drifting. This means an aftermarket steering wheel for ultimate hand control, a bucket seat to keep your ass from flying around, harnesses to keep you strapped in, a harness bar to hold the harnesses, a hydraulic handbrake for consistent pulls, a cage or door bars for tandem runs at a track, and a ridiculously tall dildo shifter for easy reach, and some cool bits and bobs to make sure your style is sick tight. Now, what do you tackle first? I'd start with an aftermarket steering wheel and a bucket seat, then worry about the rest. Without these, you'll have less control over your car, and that affects how you drift. What I mean is, if you don't have a bucket seat, you'll be tossed around the car, gripping the steering wheel so tight just to hold on that it transfers to your driving. You're using the wheel as a handle instead of, steering. Now, you shouldn't be gripping the wheel, you should be turning it. Plus, without a bucket seat, you'll be bracing yourself against the door, and trust me, your knees will pay the price.
Ask me how I know.
Bucket seats, harnesses, and steering wheels not only look the part, but make you a way more controlled driver. Then you can focus on driving instead of trying to keep yourself from flying out the window. As far as the other stuff I mentioned, that's going to come down to your build priorities. You could strip your interior and go full race car and spend a fuck ton of money, or keep the full interior and go street drift style and still spend a fuck ton of money. All jokes aside, a cage and hydro are mods you'll want eventually, whether you go full race car or more of a street build, but they can wait. You don't need them when you're just starting out or keeping it grassroots. Just know that some tracks require a cage or door bars if you want to tandem with other cars. As far as the handbrake goes, a hydraulic handbrake isn't necessary, but once it's set up right, it's more consistent and requires less maintenance. But drifting with a stock handbrake is perfectly fine. If the grassroots drifters in Japan can do it on sketchy mountain roads, it'll be fine on a flat track. You'll just have to adjust the tension every now and then maybe replace the brake shoes or pads once in a while once they start wearing out. I've been drifting on my stock handbrake for years and haven't found it necessary to do a hydro just yet. Also, don't forget about style when you're modifying the inside of your car. When done right, you can complement the interior with the exterior. Personally, I'm a fan of full interior street style, where each accessory and mod works together, but it's not too much. Cost-wise, an interior setup can range vastly, depending on what you're doing and how you do it. For my dream setup, it'd be around $5,000 because of the seats, but you can do a more affordable setup for around $1,000 to $1,500. Now, style. This is the other half of drifting, where your creativity and authenticity can explode. Now, before we get into engine and powertrain side of things, we need to talk about style. Style is just as crucial to drifting as getting sideways. It's part of the authentic culture of drifting. Without style, are you really even drifting? Because if not, Naoki's gonna come over and door tap your silly ass for forgetting that. Like we mentioned before in our video, drifting more than just sideways, style is a core part of the drift game. At the end of the day, drifting is an art, and a huge part of that art is the car, which means taking a gander at other builds, drawing some inspiration, and paying attention to how they do it back in that motherland of drifting. It's about finding that balance between authenticity and individual creativity. That means some sick tight JDM wheels that are fitted up nicely with good specs, whether they're sick monoblock wheels or those gorgeous deep dish 3-piece wheels. Pair that with a dope body kit and top it off with a sweet paint job, and maybe even throw on some liveries for some extra flair. Now, some of you watching this already get it. You've seen how grassroots drift cars are styled, or you've peeped grassroots drift teams like Animal Style, Lean Sense, or Charm. But for those who don't, hear me out. Not every wheel on body kit combo works. Do your due diligence and really understand the art and the culture of authentic drift style. From there, learn how to complement your car's body lines, color combos, wheel choice, and liveries so they all work together in harmony. Styling a drift car is literally an art, and just like painting, it takes time to understand how to pull it off right. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking.
Well, style car that I'm just gonna crash.
And I say, why style your hair if it's just gonna get messed up? Why wear nice shoes if they're just gonna get worn? Why wear your best clothes to your birthday dinner knowing you're gonna spill sauce on that button up your mom bought you? Because that's drifting, baby. Styling a drift car isn't just a creative representation of you, it's a sign of respect for the culture of drifting. Now, cost-wise, this can vary widely, considering wheels, bodywork, aero, paint, and other doodads like grills, headlights, taillights, and spoilers. You're looking anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. Again, depending on your setup. So right now, adding all the money up, we're sitting at the low end of $9,600 and on the high end of upwards to over $30,000. And we haven't even touched the engine. This is where things drastically change depending on your car and build priorities. If you stick with a stock engine setup and just add bolt-ons, you could save a lot of cash. But if you're thinking of a full engine swap or a full engine build, better break out a second wallet or hit up grandma for some of her rainy day fund. Adding power is awesome, but keep in mind it's often expensive, time consuming, and might even reduce reliability depending on how you do it. Anyone who has been down this road knows engine swaps or wild mods create a domino effect. It usually goes something like this. Oh, you want to swap that engine in? Cool. But now you need a specific transmission to go with it. Oh, that transmission doesn't fit? Guess you'll need an adapter kit or maybe a custom or aftermarket drive shaft. Oh, and don't forget you'll likely need to adjust your differential gear ratio since the new transmissions ratio are different from stock, affecting your final drive.
Oh.
And that engine needs wiring and a tune.
But wait.
Your stock ECU can't handle it, so you'll need a standalone ECU. Now we can tune it, right? Nope, that engine needs more fuel. So get ready for a high performance fuel pump like a Whirlpool 255. Oh, you need even more fuel? Time for aftermarket fuel rail and injectors. But that engine is bigger than the stock one, so guess what? You'll need more cooling.
Oh.
Is your steering shaft in the way? Time to go electric steering. Nice turbo by the way, but looks like your ABS module is in the way. Time for an ABS delete. And so on and so forth. You get the point. It's rarely as simple as just dropping a new engine in. This also applies for forced induction setups like the turbo setup. And sure, it might be that easy for some cars, but it's rare. When doing an engine swap, especially with an engine from a different manufacturer, a good rule of thumb is to multiply the cost of the engine by 4, and that's probably what you're looking at to get the car running and driving the right way. Now, I know someone's probably gonna say, well, I swapped a junkyard LS motor for $2 and a pickle. Sure, there are cheaper ways to do it, but with cars, especially with engine mods and swaps, you'll get what you pay for, especially if you want to do it right. If you cheap out on something, expect something else to cheap out on you later. The mod triangle always applies. You want it cheap and reliable, it's probably not going to be fast. You want it fast and reliable, it's definitely not going to be cheap. You want it fast and cheap, well, good luck with reliability. And when it comes to drifting, ask yourself, would you rather be out driving your car or stuck fixing it, wishing you were on the track with your buddies, getting seat time and going sideways?
So yeah,
Run up those credit cards because your bank account is already empty. My suggestion is find the right car first. One that has a lot of aftermarket support for what you want to do. Everyone knows the S chassis has over 30 years of aftermarket R&D and it's still going strong. You can swap just about any engine into one because of that support. Another good example would be the 86 FRS chassis. It has tons of aftermarket support for swaps like 2JZ, K-Series, and LS engines. Choosing the right car can save you a ton of physical and emotional pain, not to mention the money and time spent lying underneath the car, covered in oil and dirt, reflecting on your life choices. Price-wise, for an engine swap or adding forced induction and doing it the right way, there's a wide range. At minimum, you're looking at $5,000 if you pick the right car, engine swap, and do it correctly. On the high end, the sky's the limit. Some people drop over $50,000 on a swap or engine build. Typically, for an engine swap with a lot of aftermarket support, you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 to do it right. So what's the grand total for everything? On the low end, expect to spend around $15,000, and on the high end, $80,000 plus. And remember, this is excluding the car, so add the price of the car to those numbers. Now, I know there will be anomalies, and someone out there might be able to pull off a super basic drift build with form and function like we did back in the day for less than $10,000 total with the car and mods. But those days are going away, and it's getting rare to be able to do a budget drift build the right way without sacrificing something. Another thing to think about is time. The time devotion to pull this off is immense. Anyone with any experience working on cars knows that you're just one snapped, cross-threaded, or rounded out bolt away from a 1-hour project turning into a 2-day project, or hell, even a week if it's really fucked up. A good rule of thumb is the 10-to-1 rule, where 10 hours of working in your car correlates to 1 hour of driving. And this doesn't even count the time spent earning the money to afford modifying your car. If you factor that in, you could be looking at something like 80-to-1 ratio between working on your car and working to earn money to spend on your car. And if you ever end up doing competition drifting, all of this multiplies even more. Now, I'm not a huge fan of competition drifting, and I've explained why in past videos. I like grassroots non-comp style of drifting, which is achievable for almost anybody. Now, if you're truly passionate about it, all of those numbers don't mean anything, because at the end of the day, someone passionate about drifting will find a way. They'll find the money, and their passion will be the driving force in their life, just like it is for me. There are some honorable mentions in the mods and requirements category that I didn't fully dive into. Things like sway bars and roll center adjusters, upgraded brakes, a solid cooling system, and weight reduction. Don't forget your personal safety gear like helmets, gloves, and a fire extinguisher. And of course, tires. Those are huge for drifting, obviously, and what you're going to be spending a lot of money on. I want to make sure I covered the big essentials without stretching this video too long. In future videos, we'll focus on things like used tires versus new tires and how to save money on them. But for now, hopefully your brain is a little bit more knowledgeified. Thanks for tuning in. As a true enthusiast of cars and drifting, I'm stoked to take you along for the ride. Through this channel, I'll be diving deep into my world of cars, whether it's drifting, car reviews, or upcoming builds. You'll get to see all of it unfold. I want to grow this into more than just a channel. It's a community for those who live and breathe cars. Best way to make that happen? Join the Skidded Media crew. A simple click to subscribe, a like, or sharing with your friends goes a long way. Together, we can show the world our passion for cars and motorsports. Remember, stay sick tight.